A project to clean up Schoolhouse Pond in Hyannis moves forward. The Housing Committee hears more about plans to move the homeless shelter in Hyannis, and we chat with Police Chief Paul McDonald about the growing number of heroin overdoses in our community. All of this and more on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Wednesday, October 21st, 2015. I'm Sarah Mannel. The Conservation Commission approves a project to rid Schoolhouse Pond in Hyannis of toxic algae blooms. Karen Malkus, the town's coastal health resource coordinator, urged the commission to approve the project, saying the algae blooms are a health hazard for animals and children.
So the goal is to put in one solar-powered unit for water circulation, and the units have been used before. The first one was in Harwich at Skinnequit Pond. It was put in by a road association on a pond. That was the first one, I think 2010, but I could be wrong, or maybe 2007. I'll look up the date. And then recently in Santuit Pond in Mashpee, they've put in 3, and that's been quite successful. Let me read to you what they said. This year, Alan Waxman, who's the Friends of Santuit Pond, who was part of the process to get their RDA, says recent Secudis readings around Santuit Pond exceed 2 meters where the water is that deep. Best we've ever seen. This is the 4th summer for the solar bees. Each year is better than the previous, and there's no weed growth problem as of yet in the northern end.
The Conservation Division will now seek funding for that project. The Housing Committee learns more about plans to move the homeless shelter in Hyannis. Deb Crow of the Hyannis Civic Association addressed the committee and talked about how the shelter's model will change along with its location.
We are working. There's an executive committee and then a very large steering committee to reinvent the shelter and move it. We're looking for another place to have it. Its focus would go from bed at night, which is about what we have right now, to a program that can help the people be better prepared to be good tenants. So that's what we're trying to do, and that program would include basic life skills and all of those types of programs. It'll also have a small little business in order to help its operating costs, which of course will be more than the operating costs right now for the program. So we're hoping to work with people, but the real success of this program comes if we can create huge movement. In other words, when we have someone in the program, the day program, that appears to have acquired the skills and the desire to move on, that there's some place to go.
And Crow says there is also a need for transitional housing options with case management to help homeless individuals move forward and succeed on their own. You can watch the entire discussion by visiting the town's website and clicking on the video on demand button, and then click through to the Housing Committee meeting. A rash of recent heroin overdoses is a cause for concern for Police Chief Paul McDonald. Barnstable This Morning host Sarah Colvin talked about the issue with the chief earlier this week. We share a portion of that interview with you now.
Of course, it's really unfortunate that we have to continue talking about this problem, but it seems like it certainly isn't going away anytime soon. Drug overdoses continue to plague our community. Tell me, what is the latest from your perspective?
Well, it's not going away, and actually I think it's getting much worse, and it's important to keep it out there so people are aware of it and they know what's going on out the street. I mean, the biggest thing to prevent this is some type of education and prevention program. With that being said, we calculate it and we track it very carefully, and just so far, year to date, there's been 125 overdoses in the town of Barnstable. That's beginning January 1st until last night at midnight. And with that overdoses, there's been 10 fatalities. and then we break it down for even further with that. If you break it down, we have 10 of them were homeless individuals. And then if you go back and if you compare it to 1 year ago at the same time, there were only 45 drug overdoses. So it's gone up substantially. But if we remember when we were tracking it, we talked about it last year, come around end of November and the beginning of December last year, that's when we really saw an increase in the number of overdoses. That's when it skyrocketed. I believe in the month of December of last year, we had almost 30 drug overdoses. So this is continuing to be a huge problem for town of Barnstable, not just for Barnstable. We heard the news reports last week that town of Yarmouth had 3 fatalities last week alone. So this is a problem right across the state.
Absolutely, and I did see that news report in Yarmouth, and you know, the young men and women in their early 30s who did experience those overdoses. It's really unfortunate. So, Chief, I mean, so many factors at play here. Obviously, the strength of the drug, the amount of people using it. But is there anything that we can see, anything we can identify at this point that's contributing to this skyrocketing numbers of overdoses in our community?
It's kind of all over the map. You know, in the old days, you know, you would see relatively young people. You know, occasionally you see someone in their early 30s to mid 30s, but now you're seeing individuals up into the 50s, up into their 60s, and they too are overdosing, which tells me they're kind of being addicted on the painkillers. They run out of the painkillers and they're moving on to heroin and cocaine. But also some of the some of the product they're buying out there, you know, it's not pure, or it's a combination of heroin and cocaine, or it's being cut with fentanyl, and fentanyl is extremely addictive, and if you take just a small quantity of fentanyl, you will overdose almost immediately. So there is a problem out there. And then we also have to look at Narcan. You know, Narcan was introduced, you know, late December, early January last year, and Narcan certainly is a miracle drug, but is it causing people to take unnecessary chances? Because since Narcan has been introduced, you know, the number of overdoses has grown incredibly.
I think it is, in some instances, Chief, gives people that false sense of security, and, you know, anecdotally have heard, you know, out on the street of people saying, oh, you know, we'll have a Narcan party, you know, we'll get this and then we can get as high as we possibly want, and we're not going to die because we've got this thing that can save us.
That's exactly what they're doing. You know, they're experimenting with taking a larger and larger dose, and they're telling the friends, you know, if I pass out, if I overdose, here is a Narcan, here's what you have to do to bring me back. And these numbers that we have, these are our numbers that we know of. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean all the ones that the fire department has and the hospital has. So these are conservative numbers. So this is really a huge problem for us. And it's hard to wrap your head around it, you know, why people are taking these chances with the life or death risk you're taking here.
Indeed, Chief. And of course, public safety officials such as yourself, the department, the fire department, are really seeing the problem almost by the time it's too late to help these folks. So, you know, if they're overdosing, they've already got the addiction issues. So what, you know, it's going to take a coordinated community effort, obviously. I think that all of the stakeholders are having these conversations. But where do you see, or where do you kind of hope that we can maybe beef up this education and prevention?
Well, obviously, the education and prevention have to start at a very, very young age. And I applaud Gosnell. Gosnell is already reaching out to some of the schools, the middle schools, the high school, the Barnstable. They have counselors in there now, so that's great. The court system, they have to get on board. There has to be some type of rather than going to jail, going into some type of treatment facility. You're providing it for possession only, not for distribution. I know the governor's coming out with a 72-hour program where now we should go to the hospital and they're giving you pain medication that is opiate based. They're only giving you enough pain medication that will get you through 72 hours. And at the same token, they're trying to give the physicians the capability that if you come in there and you're obviously addicted to some type of opiate, they're going to have the ability for some type of civil commitment to hold you up to 72 hours to detoxify you. So that could go a long way. And I know some of the state legislators, they're working on the protective custody statute because this is a huge problem for us. We administer Narcan. The person somewhat recovers, regains consciousness. As soon as he does, you know, he has the ability just to walk away, which is a huge problem because he's regained his consciousness now, the heroin, the cocaine is still in the system, and you could very well overdose again, and we're not going to be around. So. And
you can hear from Chief McDonald every Tuesday morning during our 1 hour-long news program, Barnstable This Morning. That show airs weekdays at 7 a.m. On tomorrow's show, we're going to learn more about the Lone Star tick on Sandy Neck. We'll chat with Airport Manager Bud Brialt, plus we'll have all the news and information you need. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Mannel.